Hi, welcome to SIG Usability session. I'm Pamel Shinh, Staff Product Designer at VMware. Today, currently navigating the world of Kubernetes. Gaby. I'm going to let Gaby introduce herself.
Thanks, Pamel. My name is Gaby. I'm a designer at IBM, also working on anything Kubernetes related.
Well, we really appreciate you being here. To start off, to give you an overview of what we'll be talking about, we'll start off by giving an introduction to SIG Usability, how it came about, and what are we working on, and who are the people who should be contributing to this SIG. We'll focus some time on our ongoing work and what we've been doing there, and how you can contribute if you want to, and what the plan is for going forward. So SIG Usability, an introduction to it. It came about when a bunch of us decided to talk around the space of user experience and Kubernetes. We wanted to focus a little bit on usability and experiences of the Kubernetes users. And we thought, why not use the open source community and platform and leverage it in terms of starting a dialogue and discussions around that. Today, we have a diverse set of contributors. We have product managers, product designers, developers, all from different fields that have been coming together to basically focus on one goal, to unify the experience of Kubernetes and have experiences that are good enough for the Kubernetes space. But going forward, we're going to be diving a little bit deeper, kind of taking a user experience approach to this presentation and talking about the journey of two of our contributors. Pamel, the designer, and Gaby, the developer. And this is their journey to SIG Usability. So let's talk a little bit about Pamel. Pamel's a product designer at VMware. 3 years ago, she was assigned a project that integrates Kubernetes into VMware's virtual platform. This would enable their customers to deploy Kubernetes workloads, which was a big change for their platform. Wow, the pressure Pamel felt at that time. She had to learn so much about Kubernetes. So she started her research. Like any other designer, she went to her PMs and engineers and asked them where she could learn more about Kubernetes. She had a lot of questions. What is Kubernetes? How do I design for Kubernetes? Who am I designing for? Are there any industry standards? And what about like reaching users? How do I get access to them? There were a lot of questions. So she got access to a lot of and tons of like technical resources, which helped her understand Kubernetes and why it mattered to her company. Just to reference a few, there are the Kubernetes documentation, which we all know of, a ton of YouTube videos, and of course, the Kubernetes zoo story about Fifi the giraffe. Well, that really helped her initially because that was the easiest thing to actually refer to start with. But she still had to like continue her project, just like understanding the users and understanding all these missing pieces that was still just so difficult to understand. I wish she had access to some resources that would help her understand what the others were doing in this space. Were there any case studies about learnings and pain points and just understanding the Kubernetes users, or just understanding the users? What did they want from her? How could she help them understand them and give them something that they wanted from their product? Because in the end, her goal was simple, just understand her users and deliver experiences that were relevant to them. Now, moving forward, Gaby is going to talk about her experiences as a developer.
Thanks, Pamel. And I'll actually be channeling my inner developer here because I'm a designer, but representing how SIG Usability fits into our code contributors for Kubernetes project. So, imagine Gaby is a developer at CloudCore, and 3 months ago, her company made the strategic decision to contribute their next feature on their product roadmap to the Kubernetes project. So she was assigned to work on this feature, and ever since then, she's been getting used to the Kubernetes community's code, their tools, and their processes. Despite the learning curve here, this has actually been a great experience for her. She feels like she understands Kubernetes a lot better. Her contributions have also caught the attention of some other companies' developers, and they have also started contributing to the project. So that's really neat for her. However, as time goes by, she feels pressured to wrap up. and to move on with her company's internal roadmap. Done is better than perfect, but she does like to do things right and feels like her future could be even more efficient, reliable, not to mention usable, localized, accessible, the works. So just to recap, kind of like how SIG usability fits into here, as code contributors, we want our code contributions to be meaningful. We want them to be efficient, reliable, and usable. But, everybody as contributors has limited time to dedicate. We all have our day jobs. And in particular, usability expertise is, something that can be very specialized. And say, for example, you have some code contributions that you're working on. How do you get user feedback on that in a streamlined way? So this is kind of where SIG usability comes in, where our goals for all of us as contributors is to really look at the experience of upstream Kubernetes and make it more consistent and user-friendly. We also, the SIG is a great place for both designers, developers, researchers, product managers to start, building their open source foundations from. SIG usability is also here to help contributors understand their users and who they are designing and contributing and developing for. We also want to be able to offer resources and have a unified language for usability across the Kubernetes project. So with all of that said, SIG usability actually just turned 1 year in July. We were started in July 2019, and right now we have 73 members in our Google group and 127 members in our Slack channel, which you all are welcome to join. As far as companies actively contributing to the project, we have Pivotal, Google, IBM, VMware, and Red Hat. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our ongoing work. We have everything from some research projects going on to visual design work. So I'll go ahead and give an overview of that. Our persona guide is one of the first projects that the SIG started working on. So when we got started, I think as a SIG, it made a lot of sense for us to kind of come together and start talking about who uses Kubernetes, like who is Kubernetes for? And I think we had a great inventory of the types of people that use it, led by Boaz and their previous research at VMware. And what we realized kind of after coming out of these discussions is that there's so many roles that use Kubernetes and they can be so overlapping. An example of that is a Kubernetes operator and then an app developer. We all know that that divide is not as clean as we like it to be. And so that kind of turned into the next project that I'll talk about here, which is our job study. So for some of you that maybe come from a user research background, you may have heard of a jobs to be done approach and kind of how it lets you look at what people are trying to achieve with the products that they're using. So CNCF actually puts out a great survey every year that breaks down some demographics of the Kubernetes community. And so we can kind of see how Kubernetes adoption is going. And what this study is trying to do is kind of be an extension of that and say, talk to some representative people that use Kubernetes and try to identify high value and high opportunity use cases that we as a community can improve on. And the SIG can do that because we are cross-cutting. We're not looking at any specific area of Kubernetes, but across the whole experience. So if you want to learn more about that, there's a Google Doc link here in the slides, and we can share that afterwards as well. So this takes us to our other project, which is currently led by Josie at Pivotal, or VMware. Josie is looking at how labels are used across the Kubernetes project, specifically usability-related labels. So she's looking not only at Kubernetes, but also other open source projects to see how those labels are used And hopefully, in a future, we can align on a set of labels that we as SIG Usability can kind of rally around that may cover areas such as accessibility, internationalization, and UI, not to mention UI. And basically, like, what that can let us do is we can start socializing these labels and kind of surface usability concerns across the project. So thank you, Josie, for working on that. And with that, I will pass it out to Pamel to talk about one of the projects that she is working on.
Thanks, Gaby. So icons. Icons was one of the first few things that initiated the talk about having a SIG around usability, user experience. And there's a PM of mine, Tasha, also a co-chair on the SIG, that was working with me on a project. And we looked around for icons that we could find in the open source community that we could use in our products. And we found that there was nothing out there that we could reference to. Which led to the discussion of how can we make icons more consistent across the community, as there's a lot of integration and requirement of consistency in terms of visual discussion around objects and Kubernetes objects. So going forward now, we have an icon repository that we are working on. There's a Google Doc that's linked below. So if you have any recommendations or would like to work with us on designing a particular icon that is required for you or your product, do reach out to us or leave comments in the Google Doc so that we could work on it together. So looking forward, that was all the work that we've been doing and is currently in the works. So if you have time or you would like to work with us on any of this project or have recommendations, please do reach out. But we do have some projects that we want to start focusing on going forward. A few ideas that we want to focus on are focus on heuristics, accessibility. How do we make Kubernetes more accessible and useful for everybody in the community? And really focus on the developer side of the experience, as Gaby was mentioning through her journey story, that there is this developer persona that we want to start supporting through the SIG, make resources and make things available for them that make their life easier as when they are doing their jobs and delivering Kubernetes to others. So you can get involved and contribute and be part of a community by a bunch of ways. Some of them are you can join the SIG Usability Slack channel, or you could follow us on GitHub and see all the discussions in the SIG Usability GitHub account. We have a Kubernetes group called the Kubernetes SIG Usability. This is where you can read all the past discussions, get access to all the documentations that we were mentioning before. This also gives you access to the meeting invites, which happen once a month on Tuesdays, where we discuss any open items or anything related to usability. And the fourth thing is that we do want to encourage you to share your experiences on Medium, tag us, or talk about your experiences with SIG Usability, of how we can contribute more to the Kubernetes space, specifically in the usability space. And I've linked an example here, a very good Medium article written by Gaby. It talks about being a part of the SIG Usability community and how you can contribute more. I would definitely check with your organization if you can contribute. There are definitely sometimes documents that you might have to sign to be a part of a community like this or to contribute in a community like this. We are always looking for ideas for discussion or areas for discussion in the usability space, or how we could enhance the discussion around usability. It's an easy process. It's not very defined at the moment, but what we do is, if you do have an idea, come to one of our meetings, propose an idea. We can discuss it over there. You can get some feedback. You can also identify members that can help you with the project. We do encourage representing like an initial plan or a timeline for your project. Everybody's busy, but it gives like a sense of just knowing where the project is going. And once you have your project in a good place, we tend to do a final share out and document the project so that other people have access to your findings, so they can reference to it if they need going forward. So that was it for today. Thank you for coming to our session and learning about SIG usability. We will love to have more contributors and people joining our team to talk usability. So please do reach out to Gaby and me, or get involved in any of the ways that we mentioned before. Thank you.
It doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat. If anybody wants to drop them in, we're happy to take them, and if not, we can end early. I'm not seeing any questions, so I think we could go ahead and call it a session, and Pamela and I can go ahead and share some of the links that we mentioned in our presentation on the Slack. Slack being to KubeCon maintainer after this talk. So thank you all for coming.